So President Cyril Ramaphosa added 2 ministries to his cabinet, announcing 33 ministers. Ramaphosa unveiled his new executive that includes members from parties in the Government of National Unity last night. The Democratic Alliance has been allocated 6 ministerial posts, with its leader John Steenhuisen leading the Agriculture Ministry. The DA's federal chairperson, Helen Zille, now joins us to have a conversation and reaction to the announcement that has been made by the President. Helen, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. From the Democratic Alliance's side, your reaction to what the President announced last night?
Well, we're in it to do our very best for South Africa, to show the DA difference in the portfolios that we've got, and to try and help rescue South Africa. That's our job now.
Yeah, to try helps rescue South Africa, which is part of your manifesto. And in the President's speech last night, right at the end of the speech, after announcing the ministers as well as the deputy ministers, he says that none of the members of the National Executive has been appointed to serve the interest of particular constituencies, a particular party or a particular section of society. How do you understand it, and how are you going to navigate around that?
Well, that's always been the DA's position. When we get into government, we serve absolutely everybody. And all our policies are designed to advance the whole nation, and especially to lift poor people out of poverty through economic growth and jobs and good service delivery and lack of corruption. So that's always been our position.
Yeah, but perhaps maybe a difference in interpretation around the policy proposals that the DA has compared, for instance, to what the ANC has. Let's speak, for instance, about the BEE, triple BEE. The DA has a different approach to that in its understanding of what economic justice means, while the ANC believes that the BEE is very important to deal with the injustices of the past. So again, how do you navigate that particular space as a party that is now part of the GNU that doesn't agree with some of the policies that the major party of the GNU has been pursuing over the past 30 years?
Well, I'm presuming that that will come up at the national dialogue, and we'll have a good discussion. And you heard the President speaking last night about evidence-based policy making, and all the evidence shows that the ANC's version of BBBEE does not work. It makes more and more people poor and benefits a tiny politically connected elite around the ANC. So if we're going to look at the evidence in that national dialogue, we can see which policies work and which don't work, which policies help create jobs and which don't help to create jobs. In fact, which policies cause massive unemployment. So we'll be very frank about that. We'll bring the evidence. We are very pleased that the President did speak about evidence-based policy making and governance, because that is a phrase that we put in there and we insisted upon, because the evidence has to lead you in making policy and implementing policy, not ideology.
Yeah, the statement of intent speaks to a deadlock breaking mechanism. Has that been set up as yet?
No, not yet, but it also speaks to sufficient consensus, which is going to be a very, very important clause, clause 19.
Yeah, and what's the interpretation around clause 19? Is there common understanding, do you believe, amongst the members of the GNU, all 11 partners?
Well, the words are very clear, so I don't think there should be any confusion.
Yeah, there was a confusion, for instance, around section 24. So with the section 19, you believe there's common cause and understanding about what it means. What does 60% in the National Assembly mean?
Well, if you don't want to stick to an agreement, you'll always be confused about the wording, won't you?
Who doesn't want to stick to the agreement?
Well, you've seen what's happened. We in the DA have honored every step of the agreement we made with the ANC. Look at clause 16, look at clause 24. I mean, proportionality is out the window. It doesn't exist. And we spent a lot of time talking about it. Proportional dilution is out of the window. Clause 24, out of the window. So, you've got to really understand that if people don't want to stick by the agreement, they'll find a way of not understanding its clauses.
So considering that proportionality, according to your interpretation, is out of the window, but the deal still remains in place?
Yes, the deal does remain in place because we need to move forward now. We need to take the portfolios we've got. South Africans are very, very sensitive when you move into a tough negotiating space and you take a clear position based on an agreement that has already been reached, everybody says, oh, no, that's not fair. Oh, be nice, all of that sort of thing. You know, these things exist for a reason. An agreement exists for a reason. That is why we negotiated a statement of intent, and that is why we intended to implement the statement of intent.
Is it a compromise on your end, do you believe?
I suppose everybody had to compromise a bit, but we didn't know that the president was going to increase the cabinet so substantially and give the ANC so much more than proportionally was their due.
So you didn't know about the extension of cabinet?
We didn't know about the size of the cabinet.
The first time that you found out about it was when the rest of the country had heard of it?
Yes. What we did know was which portfolios we were getting and which deputy ministers we were getting. That we did know. But for the rest, we didn't have any information.
So did you know that, for instance, agriculture will be delinked from land reform? Because John Steenhuisen...
Obviously, yes. We knew about our portfolios and what they included.
Yeah, but does that not mean that then infers that there would be an extension or expansion of cabinet? Agriculture used to be agriculture and land reform. Now it's just agriculture, and land reform has been delinked from that. So meaning that...
You may infer that from one example. But the bottom line is, let me just quickly kill this call.
Sure.
The bottom line is that we don't know how many they're going to be. And we don't know that they're going to be an expansion. You might have contraction of other departments and the fusion of other departments. You can't sit there and deduce from the structuring of one department that the cabinet is going to increase in size.
Essentially, though, the Democratic Alliance, which has been campaigning for a smaller, reduced cabinet, is part of a cabinet that has been expanded. And you accept that, right?
Well, we're accepting our 6 positions. So certainly the expansion of the cabinet has nothing to do with the DAs taking more positions than it is entitled to in terms of the proportionality clause. The expansion comes from many other parties getting a lot more than they were entitled to.
You are now party to that agreement as well?
Yes.
And what does that mean? Because you promised the electorate that we are campaigning on a ticket that also includes reducing the size of cabinet. You were speaking even during your campaign about reducing the size of the number of people employed by the state, civil servants. Yet we've seen now an increase in the cabinet.
Well, indeed, there is an increase in the cabinet, and we had absolutely no idea of the extent to which that would occur. We've now got 6 ministries, which is less than our proportional due. So the DA is not contributing to the increased size of the cabinet, that's for sure. We will continue with our 6 portfolios to do our very best and to add as much value as we can and to show the DA difference in the work that we do. So we will do that, and obviously we would like a much smaller cabinet, but in the context, we will do our very best. If the proportionality clause had been properly applied, we would have got 6 and the ANC would have got 12. And then a few parties would have got some more, so there could have been 18 cabinet ministers in all.
Yeah. With that said, Helen, what happens within the GNU in terms of holding each other accountable? If you're raising all of these issues right now, even before Cabinet has started doing its work, who holds who accountable and who says that, listen, now we need to reduce the size of Cabinet? Who puts forward such proposals?
Well, that's the president's job. He promised that, and it's in his power. It's not in the DA's power to reduce the size of the cabinet. It's the president's power to reduce the size of the cabinet.
For the DA, as long as you're part of the GNU, that's it. Whether it is small or expanded, as long as you're there.
Look, the most important thing now is not the size of the cabinet.
Oh.
I agree it should be much smaller. The most important thing now is whether the DA ministers in their jobs are going to be able to show the country that a DA government can make a big difference.
And how do you do that, Helen? Again, as I said, that the president is the chairperson of the executive.
Well, he doesn't run all the ministries. I mean, you know, you've got to have relative autonomy as a cabinet minister to run your portfolio. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, but they still report to the president, right? So the sealed mandate doesn't work anymore. It's out of the window.
We've never wanted sealed mandates.
So was that a lie from the president
What lie?
about
He never spoke
sealed,
about sealed mandates.
sealed ministries, where you have a minister and a deputy minister coming from the same political party? Was that not part of the proposal that came from the Democratic Alliance?
Yes, it was part of the proposal, but that's not sealed mandates.
Okay, please explain to us what the sealed mandate is and what you were proposing.
We were not proposing sealed mandates. Sealed mandates is when there is a total hermetically sealed department that no one else can have any input into. We don't want that. It would mean, for example, that we couldn't have any input into the budget if there was an ANC Minister of Finance. We've never wanted that, and we would never want that. What we did propose was, if you want to make really good progress and have synergy between a minister and a deputy minister, it would be a good idea to have ministers and deputy ministers from the same party in a particular portfolio to make maximum progress. That's not a sealed mandate.
Including the DG?
Well, the DG is the head of the administration, and you cannot implement your program of action and your objectives if you have an ANC cadre at the top of your administration unable to implement the policy direction. That's obvious.
Okay, now what happens going forward, because the president had said that some of your proposals are actually unconstitutional, and even making reference, for instance, to labor legislation in relation to the DGs. What's the agreement now going forward? Now that you do have, in some ministries, you have the ministries being led by the DA, and then you have a deputy minister that's coming from a different political party. Most of those deputy ministers are ANC ministers. What happens with the DGs now going forward?
Well, we will always follow the rules. We always follow due process. But we do believe that it is absolutely appropriate to have the head of department of a ministry run by the DA as someone who is committed and able to implement our policies.
Yeah, so what happens now going forward? Is the DA going to push for some DGs to be removed?
Well, we'll
the
see.
ministries
I don't know what the DGs are like. I'm not in government, Aldrin. I'm not in government. And we will have to see what the DGs are like in the different portfolios. I don't know them. I've never seen their work. All I can tell you is that when I went into government, I didn't wholesale get rid of people, even though I was taking over ANC governments. I didn't wholesale get rid of people. I looked at the quality of people's work, whether they were prepared to abide by the mandate of the electorate, whether they were prepared to deliver on our mandate. And if they were, they stayed. There was no problem. I never asked anybody their political affiliation.
Yeah, but certainly it's an important issue. That's the reason why you raised it. Earlier on, you were speaking about ANC deployees and cadre deployment. So that is an important thing for the Democratic Alliance. Which political party the DG is from, or the DG supports?
No. It's obviously important for us to be able to implement our policies. People can support the ANC or any other party without being deployees of that party. There's a big difference between the two. I have never, ever asked anybody for their political membership form. It would be completely unlawful to do so. You look at their work, you look at their commitment, you look at their professionalism, and you look at whether they're prepared to abide by the mandate of the voters.
Okay. Finally, the BELA Bill is quite a contentious one as well for the Democratic Alliance. And the Democratic Alliance, of course, didn't support that. What happens to the BELA Bill now? Is it something that you're going to put on the agenda of the national dialogue?
Well, the BELA Bill is a non-negotiable for us, the right of school governing bodies to determine the language policy of a school is a red line for us, and the ANC's been aware of that from day one.
So what does that mean? We spoke to Mokoena Maluleke earlier on, and he said that he found it interesting that the president hasn't signed that bill as yet. Does it mean that there's an agreement between the DA and the ANC that that bill will not be enacted in its current form?
There's no agreement to that effect, but we have made it clear from the very beginning that the BELA Bill is a red line for us.
Okay then. Thank you so much for your time. Helen Zille is the federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance.